Imagine a college where power is inherited, not earned, where one boy believes his last name gives him the right to own every hallway. But that belief shatters the moment he lays his hands on the wrong girl. She doesn't yell. She doesn't cry. She simply stands there calm, steady, and unafraid until 5 seconds later, the sound that echoes across campus isn't her scream, it's his. What happened in that gym will change everything the students of Hawthorne College thought they knew about fear, justice, and the kind of strength you can't buy. Stay till the end, because what she did next didn't just silence a bully, it exposed an entire system. What happens when the most entitled boy on campus puts his hands on the girl he thinks will stay quiet? Morning shaved thin light across the ivy and brick of Hawthorne College. Chloe Bennett moved through it with purpose, backpack snug, schedule memorized, breath steady. Quiz in Professor Dalton's class. Copy shop after. Call mom before 6. Keep small. Keep moving. Keep from being a story. Laughter bent the air behind her hard, bright, owned. Brad Miller's laugh. Varsity jacket. Watch that flashed like a signal. 2 boys a step behind. He turned the corner and the hallway changed the way weather changes suddenly, with pressure you feel in your teeth. Chloe counted floor tiles because counting works when other things don't. 12, 11, 10. She angled to pass. Brad slid into her path so neatly it felt rehearsed. You lost? Financial aid's that way. The smile was practiced generosity with a bruise under it. I'm headed to Dalton, she said. Move. The word pleased him. Move. He leaned in close enough for the cologne to sting. Dalton's a gate most people don't get through. Don't feel bad. Hawthorne wasn't built for everyone. He said it lightly, like a fact that wouldn't mind being called a joke. Doors along the corridor softened toward closed. Voices thinned. Elena Hayes appeared at the far end, saw the set of Chloe's shoulders and slowed. Elena knew Chloe's tells. The jaw that refused to clench, the breath anchored low, the eyes that stayed level. Move, Chloe repeated. Brad's friends shifted. One muttered, leave it. Brad didn't. He tilted his head, amused by her spine. I'm trying to help, he said. Some people don't know their place until it's taught. Place. The word had history. Grocery aisles with a shadow at your back. Classrooms where your answer has to be perfect to be counted. Chloe stepped right. Brad matched, turning the hallway into a narrow gate he believed he owned. Coach was asking for you, Elena called, making ordinary conversation out of a warning. We're good, Brad said without looking away. His palm met the locker beside Chloe's head with a bright, empty slap. Long way around next time. Makes life easier. Dignity, her mother used to say, is a house you carry. People can hammer the door, but they don't come in unless you invite them. Chloe felt the weight of that house now, the latch firm. Don't touch me, she said evenly. He laughed, crowded with disbelief. He gave her shoulder a shove, not a hit, not yet, just the kind that insists it means nothing so it can mean everything. Gasps opened up and down the corridor. Chloe set her books on the floor with care. That was the part Elena would remember, the care. As if the world could still be arranged. Brad's eyebrows climbed. Oh, we doing this? His hands opened, mock innocent. I'm keeping you from getting hurt. His fingers came again, not playful now. Flame. Command. Chloe didn't reach for anger. She reached for the voice that had taught her to thread danger instead of charge it. Turn the wrist. Take the line. Keep your feet. Do not meet force with force. Borrow it. Return it. She shifted her weight, caught his wrist, stepped through and altered the math of his balance. It looked small. It felt final. His momentum obeyed physics and not pride. He kissed the metal with the flat of his shoulder and swore. Surprise stripped him clean. Pride scrambled to dress him again. It's done, Chloe said. Let me by. Color gathered on his cheekbones. You'll regret that. It wasn't bluster. It was a lesson he'd been taught. The lesson said the rules bend toward boys like him and snap back on girls like her. Elena took 2 steps closer, hands at her sides. A line of students became architecture pillars, pretending not to watch. Professor Dalton's office door opened down the hall. He filled the frame in shirt sleeves. Everything all right? We're fine, Brad said quickly, smoothing his jacket, smoothing the story he would tell in the voice adults believe. Chloe lifted her books. Her pulse slowed. She wanted no stage, no savior. She wanted a clear path to the classroom she had earned. She stepped forward. Brad slid a half step to block her again. The confidence was thinner now, like ice that remembers yesterday's thaw. Move, she said a third time. He didn't. His mouth curved, but the curve had a tremor. Chloe let the books fall. The sound cracked the breathless hall. She rolled her shoulders, loosening something that had ached since middle school hallways and bus stops and small-town stores where courtesy came with a measuring tape. 5 seconds can be a lifetime when a person decides who they are. Chloe decided. She set her feet. She raised her hands, not high, not dramatic, just enough to say the door of her house was shut, and met his eyes without apology. The corridor narrowed to the space between them and the law of what would happen next. And in that thin, electric quiet, Hawthorne College discovered that quiet does not mean weak, and polite does not mean permission. The hallway stayed in her bones long after it emptied. Chloe walked through the next classes hearing the echo of metal on skin, the little gasps that followed. Every whisper felt shaped around her name. At lunch she sat with Elena, pushing pasta around her plate, trying to be normal. Elena watched her hands shake when she reached for her drink. "You did what anyone should have done," Elena said quietly. "He's been waiting to get checked." Chloe gave a small, humorless laugh. "People like him don't get checked. They get applauded." Across the dining hall, Brad leaned against the counter surrounded by his circle. He looked fine, grinning, alive in his certainty. But every so often his eyes flicked toward her. There was calculation in it, not anger yet something colder. By late afternoon the campus gossip had crystallized. She had embarrassed him. She had attacked him. Depending on who told it, she was either brave or violent, and both labels burned. Chloe sat outside the library steps, watching students pass with the detached calm of someone standing in the wrong movie. She thought of her mother back home who would tell her to keep her chin high, but high chins can draw crosshairs. That evening, Professor Dalton found her waiting outside his office. "You wanted to talk?" he asked, voice steady, kind. She nodded. Inside, books lined the shelves, old and smelling of cedar and thought. "Something happened in the hall this morning," she said, then stopped, unsure where to start. "Brad Miller?" Dalton asked. She looked up, surprised. "Yes. You heard." He sighed. "I've heard versions. None of them make me proud." He studied her face, not for drama but for truth. "You handled yourself," he said finally. "But I can't promise this will blow over. Privilege protects itself." His tone was regret more than warning. Outside, the air had cooled, the sky rinsed pale. Chloe walked back to her dorm. A note waited taped to her door. "Watch your step." Block letters, marker bleeding through the paper. She read it twice, then folded it, slid it into her notebook without comment. Inside, Elena paced, eyes wide. "He's telling people you blindsided him." "Let him," Chloe said. "Truth doesn't need an audience." But she didn't sleep. She watched headlights slice the blinds and thought of every time someone told her to be grateful, polite, invisible. The next morning came with rain. She walked into class feeling the stare of 50 eyes. Brad sat 2 rows over, bandage at his temple like a medal. He smiled, slow and smug, then leaned to whisper something that made the boy next to him laugh. Professor Dalton entered, clearing his throat. "Settle, please." His eyes flicked briefly toward Chloe, then back to the board. The lecture blurred. Every word floated past without meaning. Her heart was busy counting exits. After class she packed her things. A figure blocked her way. Brad again, calm, measured. "You got lucky yesterday," he said softly. "That's all." "Move," she said, that one word now a habit. He tilted his head. "Careful, Bennett. People like you get scholarships taken for less." He left then, a predator satisfied with marking scent. She stood until the hallway emptied, then leaned against the wall, breath shaking. Elena appeared, drenched from the rain. "He's planning something," she whispered. "Mason said he's gathering his guys tonight." Chloe smiled faintly, brittle around the edges. "Let him plan. I'm done hiding." The decision slid into place without fanfare. Courage, she realized, isn't fireworks. It's fatigue that refuses to fold. By dusk she walked the path toward the gym. The rain had stopped, but puddles held the last light like mirrors. The campus was quiet, weekend soft. She thought about Professor Dalton's words, about the note on her door, about every move she'd ever swallowed. Her pulse beat against her throat like a drum calling soldiers home. At the gym doors she paused, hand on the handle. The hum of fluorescent lights came faint through the crack. Somewhere inside, voices rose and broke into laughter. She exhaled, steady, slow, and stepped in. The door clicked shut behind her, sealing the quiet. And for the first time since she came to Hawthorne College, Chloe Bennet wasn't afraid of being seen. The gym smelled of varnish and sweat, the kind that clung to memories. The echo of bouncing basketballs from earlier practice still whispered in the rafters. Chloe stepped onto the polished floor, her sneakers marking the only sound. For a moment she thought she had beaten them here, that maybe the threat had been bluff, but then she saw movement near the bleachers. Brad Miller stood in the half-light, arms folded, the confident smirk back in place. Two boys leaned against the wall behind him, shoulders broad, expressions flat. Mason and Trent his shadows. Chloe's stomach tightened, but she didn't flinch. She kept her voice level. "You wanted to talk?" "Talk." Brad's reply came slow, deliberate. "I wanted to remind you who you're dealing with." His words carried the ease of someone who had never been told no and meant it. "You humiliated me," he said. "In front of everyone. You think I'm going to let that slide?" Chloe shook her head, calm. "I didn't humiliate you, Brad. You did that yourself when you pushed me." His eyes narrowed. "You shouldn't even be here. This college was built for families who earned their place." The air thickened. The racist undertone wasn't even hidden now. "I earned mine," she said quietly. "You bought yours." Brad took a slow step forward, the sound of his shoes scraping the floor like a threat. Mason shifted as if waiting for a cue. "We could end this right now," Brad said, spreading his arms. "You apologize, admit you got carried away, and we'll forget it happened." Chloe's laugh was small, but it cracked the space between them. "You don't want an apology. You want proof I'm scared." He smiled like a man who had already written the ending. "You should be." Then he moved. It wasn't a shove this time, it was a grab, his hand catching her sleeve, yanking her off balance. Instinct lit her body before thought could. She twisted free, stepping back, palms up. "Don't," she warned. But the boys behind him closed in. Mason's voice cut the air. "Tsichihia." The fear came fast, but it came with anger laced inside it, the kind that makes a person sharper. She remembered her father's voice when she was little, teaching her balance with an old broom handle. "Control the ground and no one can take it from you." Brad lunged again. She ducked, grabbed his forearm, turned her weight and sent him stumbling. Mason rushed, arms swinging wide. She stepped aside, caught his elbow, pushed down. He fell hard, the wind leaving his lungs in a broken wheeze. Trent froze, eyes wide, torn between pride and reason. "Stop this," Chloe said. Her voice shook but held. "You're making it worse." Brad pushed himself up, his pride louder than pain. "You think this makes you powerful?" he spat. "You'll always be what you are." The words landed heavy, old, and poisonous. Chloe's throat burned. Every memory of whispered slurs, every time someone had questioned her place, flooded through her. But what came out was quiet, controlled. "I know exactly what I am. And that's why you can't win." He charged again, pure rage now, wild and sloppy. She didn't dodge completely this time. His arm grazed her, the sting real. But she anchored her stance, grabbed his shoulder and pivoted. The move sent him spinning, legs slipping on the slick floor, body colliding with the mats stacked in the corner. He hit the ground hard, and this time he stayed down. The gym fell silent except for his uneven breathing. Mason and Trent hovered, guilt leaking through their postures. "Brad, let it go," Mason muttered. Brad groaned, trying to rise. His eyes darted toward Chloe, not hate anymore, confusion. He had never lost like this, not to someone who didn't fit his version of the world. Chloe backed away slowly, chest rising and falling, adrenaline trembling under her skin. She looked at them, three boys who had never been told no, and said quietly, "You wanted respect. Now you have it." Then she turned for the door, hands shaking, vision blurring from the rush. Behind her, Brad's voice cracked. "You'll regret this, Bennett." She didn't answer. The door shut behind her with a solid echo, the kind that sealed chapters. Outside, the night had deepened. The campus lights glowed in halos across the wet pavement. Each breath she took felt like reclaiming space she hadn't known she'd lost. Her hands still trembled, but beneath the tremor was something fierce and clean: relief, pride, grief all tangled. She walked until the gym's hum faded, until the rain began again, washing the last noise away. She didn't know if the college would protect her or if this would follow her forever, but she knew this. Silence would never be her defense again. By morning the storm outside had quieted, but inside Hawthorne College, it had only begun. Chloe woke to a knock at her dorm door, 3 short raps, confident. Elena opened it before she could, finding 2 campus security officers in pressed uniforms. "Miss Bennett," one asked. Chloe stepped forward, heart stuttering. "Yes. Dean Wallace would like to see you." Elena tried to follow, but they shook their heads. Just her. The walk across campus felt longer than it ever had, each step a wait. Students paused mid-conversation, their eyes tracking her, whispers trailing in her wake. She knew that look, the one that says someone already decided the ending before hearing the story. Dean Wallace's office smelled of coffee and polished wood. The man behind the desk had the kind of face that smiles only for donors. Professor Dalton was already there, standing by the window, his expression guarded. The dean gestured for Chloe to sit. "We received a report," he began, voice smooth. "A serious altercation in the gym last night." "Report from who?" she asked. "Brad Miller." His name alone made her jaw tighten. "He claims you attacked him and 2 other students." She stared. "They cornered me. I defended myself." Dalton spoke, calm but firm. "I've known Miss Bennett since the start of term. She's disciplined. She's telling the truth." The dean sighed, folding his hands. "Be that as it may, perception matters. Mr. Miller's father is a major benefactor." The sentence landed like a verdict. "So Money tells the truth now?" Chloe asked softly. "Miss Bennett," the dean warned, "I'm trying to help you. There's talk of suspension." Dalton stepped forward. "Sir, we cannot punish integrity. This is exactly why she was targeted." The room held its breath. The dean looked away first. "We'll review the situation. Until then, Miss Bennett, avoid further confrontation." She nodded once, rose and left without another word. Outside the office she leaned against the cool wall. Dalton joined her a moment later. "You did nothing wrong," he said quietly. "But power protects itself. Don't let them take your peace." "Peace," she murmured. "That's long gone." That afternoon she sat by the lake behind the library, the only place on campus that didn't judge. Elena found her there, breathless from running. "You won't believe this," she said, phone in hand. On the screen, a photo glowed, Chloe standing in the gym doorway, the angle grainy, the lighting harsh. The caption twisted the story. "Scholarship girl snaps Miller hospitalized." The comments below were worse. "I didn't do this," Chloe whispered, throat raw. "I know," Elena said. "But they don't want truth. They want spectacle." As evening fell, Chloe went to the practice room where Dalton sometimes gave extra lessons. He was there packing up papers. "I'm sorry," she said, "for bringing trouble." He looked up, startled. "Trouble isn't yours to carry when it walks into you." He poured 2 cups of coffee, handed her one. "When I was your age, I watched a classmate get expelled for standing up to the same kind of arrogance. He never came back. The system didn't change him, it broke him. Don't let that happen to you." She met his eyes. "How do I not break?" "By knowing who you are when they tell you who you're not." Outside, the campus lights blinked on, scattering gold across the walkways. Chloe walked slowly back to her dorm, her mind a tangle of anger and exhaustion. She found a note slipped under her door again, the same block letters. "You should have stayed in your place." This time she didn't fold it. She tore it down the middle, then again until the pieces fluttered like confetti onto the floor. The next morning, whispers reached her that Brad hadn't come to class. Some said his father was furious. Some said he'd transferred. No one knew for sure. Chloe didn't ask. She met Dalton on the steps after lecture. "Things are shifting," he said. "People see differently now." She shook her head. "They see drama. They don't see truth." He smiled faintly. "Give it time. The world turns slow, but it turns." That night, Chloe sat by her window watching rain beat on the glass, the campus quiet beyond. Her reflection looked steadier than she felt, eyes shadowed but strong. The pain was still there, unfairness raw and bright, but beneath it, something else had begun to root. Resolve. The kind that doesn't wait for permission. She whispered to herself the words her mother once told her after a hard day at the old grocery store. "Keep walking even when the floor shakes. It means they finally heard your steps." She didn't know if tomorrow would bring suspension or silence, but she knew this moment belonged to her. Every breath, every scar, every piece of strength they tried to measure and failed to see. Days stretched into a fragile rhythm. The tension hadn't vanished, it had merely changed shape. Chloe walked across campus with her shoulders squared, aware that some still whispered, some avoided her altogether, and a few smiled in quiet respect. Power shifts quietly in places like Hawthorne College, where reputation is currency and silence is the safest investment. But now the silence had cracked and no one knew quite what to do with the sound. Professor Dalton stopped her after class one afternoon, handing back her essay. A perfect grade, but it wasn't the paper that mattered. The board reviewed everything, he said carefully. There'll be no suspension. The truth held. For a second Chloe couldn't breathe. Relief came like a tide breaking the dam of worry she hadn't realized she still carried. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me," he replied. "You stood on your own." Outside the air was soft, the first touch of spring threading through the cold. Elena waited under the old oak tree, waving a coffee cup in each hand. "Victory lattes," she said, grinning. Chloe took one, smiling despite the heaviness that still lingered. "He's gone," Elena added. "Brad. His family pulled him out. Transferred to some school upstate." Chloe stared at the ripples in her cup, unsure what she felt. Satisfaction? Pity? Maybe both. "He'll have a new place to rule," she said finally. "But maybe he'll remember this one." Elena's expression softened. "He will. People remember the moments they lose control more than the ones they win." As dusk settled, Chloe wandered alone by the lake again, the same spot where she'd once sat with a phone full of lies and fear. Now the water mirrored the faint gold of the sunset. She thought about the note she'd torn, about the words meant to cage her. She thought about every look that had told her she was trespassing in someone else's dream. And she thought about the fight, not the punches, but the moment she chose not to disappear. That choice had changed everything. Later that week, Dalton invited her to speak briefly in his ethics seminar. "Not about what happened," he said, "but about dignity. I think they'll listen to you." Standing at the front of the classroom felt strange. The same faces that had once watched her in silence now watched with something else, expectation, maybe respect. She began slowly, the words pulling from the quietest part of her heart. "People talk about strength like it's loud," she said. "But sometimes strength is just not running when you want to. It's holding your space even when everyone around you wants to shrink it." The room stayed still. A few students nodded. A few looked down. But they all listened. After class, a freshman girl stopped her in the hall. "I just wanted to say, thank you," she said softly. "My roommate said you made him apologize for a slur last semester. He never did before." Chloe smiled, small and real. "Then it was worth it." The girl hesitated. "Does it get easier?" Chloe thought for a long moment. "No," she said. "But you get stronger." That evening she sat on the dorm steps, watching lights flicker on across the quad. Elena joined her, pressing a hand against hers. "I'm proud of you," she said. "You changed something." Chloe shook her head. "I just refused to be small." Elena smiled. "That's what change looks like." They sat in companionable silence, listening to the faint sound of laughter from distant windows, the world still flawed but slightly wider than before. When Chloe finally rose to leave, the sky was deep blue, the stars beginning to cut through the haze. She whispered into the quiet as if to herself, "He cried for mercy, but I wasn't his judge. I just reminded him that mercy isn't owed to cruelty." The wind carried the words away, soft but sure. In the days that followed, she noticed small things shift: a door held open, a nod in the hallway, eyes that didn't dart away so quickly. Hawthorne hadn't become perfect overnight, but it had changed. She had changed it. And that was enough. On her last walk to class that week, Chloe looked around the campus, the old buildings, the banners fluttering, the faces that had once looked through her. Every step felt steadier, lighter. She wasn't walking through someone else's world anymore. It was hers too. The fight had carved scars, but they glowed now, not as wounds but as proof. As the chapel bells rang in the distance, she smiled to herself. "They wanted me to remember my place," she murmured. "And I did. It's right here." She adjusted her backpack and kept walking into the morning light, no longer invisible, no longer afraid, carrying with her the kind of peace that's earned, not given. If this story made you feel something, if you've ever seen someone stand up when the world expected them to stay quiet, then hit that like button right now. Share it with someone who believes real strength doesn't need to shout. And tell me in the comments, What would you have done if you were standing in Chloe's place that day? Would you have walked away? Or made them remember your name?